Welcome to our podcast, Born in Silicon Valley, where we interview startup founders exploring their journeys, their success, challenges, and lessons learned. We hope you'll be inspired in discovering what it takes to build a thriving startup. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, and here with us today we have Barrett Ames, founder and CEO of BotBuilt. Barrett, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jake.
Great. So a little bit about Barrett. He's a robotics innovator and a technology leader at BotBuilt, revolutionizing the construction industry. With experience in mechanical, electrical, and software engineering, he holds a degree from Cornell in robotics and a PhD in artificial intelligence and robotics from Duke. He has worked at NASA and was accepted into Y Combinator. Got a lot going on there. Obviously, great background, great pedigree, and solving, I think, a really incredible problem. And we'll get into that. But before we do, where are you joining us from today?
Yeah, today I'm in Durham, North Carolina. So we're just, the research triangle has 3 points. One of those points is Durham.
That's great. Yeah. Are you originally from there?
No, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. So a vastly different environment. A lot drier there than it is here.
Got it. Very cool. Yep, we're based out of California. Been to both those areas and both have their benefits. So great to have you join here from the East Coast. Let's go back a ways before we dive into your startup. Give us a little history of your background and your story. Starting off as really a young boy.
Yeah. So when I was 7 years old, I came running downstairs one morning and I said, "Mom, I just want to blow stuff up." And she said, "You're going to robot camp." And so I've been building robots since then. That's really where it all got started. I did first, like a lot of robotics people do, and stuck with it all the way through college, and then did it at NASA. So
that's great. Yeah. Talk to us about NASA. When you joined, what was your focus of building, and how long ago was that?
Yeah, so I joined NASA. I after Cornell, I wanted to go do a startup. So I talked to a bunch of my mentors and I said, "Hey, what should I do?" And they said, "You should find somebody who's significantly older than you to kind of help you find your way. You're young, you're naive." So that's what I did. I went to Phoenix. I found this guy who had been doing startups in aeronautics and robotics. And the first startup was actually anti-piracy, like actual pirates, not like internet pirates. And that totally flamed out. Just a complete and utter failure of a startup. And then I went and looked for jobs, and the last posting out of 790 postings on IEEE was this job at NASA to go build humanoid robots. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to go do that. So went and interviewed, and really the whole purpose was, again, to just like sharpen the skills, right? To go be around a bunch of smart people with more experience than me, and learn what it takes to build a robot at the very top level of skill, right? And that's what we did at NASA. We went from a blank piece of paper to a functioning robot in 18 months. That was part of the DARPA Robotics Challenge. And then after that project ended, I switched over to Robonaut 2, which was on the International Space Station. And that was cool because we were doing, the crazy thing there, most people don't realize this, but astronaut time is $50,000 an hour, right? And so we taught Robonaut 2 to do some vacuuming, because they spend 5 to 6 hours a week cleaning the International Space Station, and that's 300 grand a week, right? That we could be spending on science, but instead we're spending on astronaut maids. And so that's, that was a pretty cool project, just because from a technical standpoint, there's all this, flexible stuff, and you got to measure your forces and your torques, and but then also, like, from a practical standpoint, very useful. And then I got to play around with Atlas right before I left. We had one of the early versions of Atlas from Boston Dynamics, so I got to do some footstep path planning. And then I decided it was time to go get a PhD.
So you were at NASA. That's great. Big company, obviously, for the government, and got great experience. Um, then you just kind of switched and kind of got back into the startup world. Prior to launching BotBuilt, did you have another startup, or was it straight from there to here?
Well, there was I spent 5 years doing my PhD at Duke. And in there were a couple of projects that I toyed around with, thinking about whether or not they should be startups. It was pretty crazy to learn, 3.5, 4 years ago, that every single path for the robots that put batteries into Teslas is done manually. And I was just like, oh, right. There's like, I think if I remember correctly, somewhere between 5 and 7,000 batteries in one of those battery packs, which meant somebody went through and did each one of those by hand. And that was just like mind boggling, right? Because I would have written the program for that for sure. And looked at warehouse optimization, right? Because there's a lot you can do with a robot arm once it's placed, to make it go faster. But if you have the design freedom of where should we place the robot, in addition to the tasks that it's going to do, you can optimize even more, right? You can get another 20, 30%. So played around with that. And ultimately, like, kind of hard to monetize, mostly because the people that would benefit the most from this are like Toyota, GM, like really, really big companies. And so getting them to adopt a technology from, a very, very small company is such a long lead item that it wasn't something that I thought I'd be able to pull off at that time.
Makes sense. So, when we hear about robots, from a layman's terms or from the public that's not actually building robots, you think of humanoid figures running around doing things, picking up trash or whatever it might be doing, or just doing a lot of really cool things you see, on TV, or Elon Musk, having robots walking around and whatnot. But robots are everywhere. We don't even know where they're at. They're doing stuff for us all the time. So from your perspective, um, walk us through the inspiration behind BotBuilt, and visually, what's that look like, so the listeners understand the type of robots you're building. What are they doing, and what was the inspiration behind creating what you've created so far?
Yeah, so the inspiration for BotBuilt really comes from bad decisions in grad school, right? Like, when we came to the area, we bought a house, we bought a really bad house, and the whole idea was that during the week I'd burn my brain out on math, and then on the weekends I'd restore it by remodeling the house. And we did that for about a year, and I realized that was a terrible idea. But we had remodeled about 2/3 of the house, and I got a really visceral and clear understanding of what goes into a house, right? Because I think a lot of us have this kind of like mystical understanding of homes, like they're these complex beasts that we live in. But I peeled back the covers and saw everything, and was slightly horrified, and also slightly, just like, oh, okay, well, actually, there's a lot of regularity here. And so then I just started talking to other robotics people, talking to venture capitalists, investors about, why don't we have more robots in here, right? Like, there's a ton of labor, and why don't we, why don't we bring in robots to handle some of this labor? And the robotics people that I talked to didn't really have a great answer, right? It was just like, ooh, construction. And the investors, they didn't really understand construction, and so it seemed like a ripe opportunity, in the sense that, from a technical standpoint, at least as best as I could ascertain at the beginning, a lot of the flexibility that needed to happen is can be handled by the techniques we have right now. And so I guess that kind of set us up for a good technical understanding of stuff. And then I went and found a couple of very good business partners to help me figure out whether or not it made sense from a financial standpoint.
That's great. Robots have been around for 50 years. Why do you think robots haven't been used for construction in the past?
Yeah, I think it boils down to advances in computer vision and advances in motion planning over the last uh, 5 to 10 years. Right, we've all seen the advances that computer vision has made in the recent history, and that enables a lot of the construction industry as well, in the sense that the the same localization problems exist in construction. We're doing organic materials, which means that they're never the same, right? So there's always some kind of bend or twist or a knot in a different place where previously, like, had you just tried traditional approaches, they would have failed. And then motion planning allows us to, now that we know about where all of these differences and oddities are, we can dynamically adjust the robots on the fly. And so that gives us this kind of 1-2 combo to tackle building homes, meeting construction exactly where it is today.
So I think about robotics when it comes to manufacturing anything of what comes to mind to me is a warehouse or Amazon or Tesla, or they're building cars, or any automotive manufacturer really that's got robotics helping build it. Specifically in construction, what part of the house are you looking to use robotics for?
Yeah. There's the short term answer and the long term answer. The long term answer is our mission is to end homelessness. And that means I'm going to push robots into every corner of construction that I can get them into. Um, that is a long technical road. In the short term, it's getting robots into building framing. And why framing? It's basically like if you take a graph of like expense and labor, framing's up there in the corner of being a big portion of a house and a very labor intensive portion of a house. And it's just moving about a bunch of rigid bodies and nailing them together, right? Like it's literally just taking two pieces of wood and nailing them together. You just got to do that a couple thousand times, and you have to do it in the right places. So that's kind of the long and short of it, I guess.
So I want to buy a house, or I want to build a house rather. I have an architect. He puts together the plan. Once that plan's created, we got to buy materials. We got to make sure those materials are measured and cut, and then put together. It's typically on site. How do you guys do it?
Right. Yeah. So we do it in a warehouse, and that allows for control over a few different things right now. But the process with BotBuilt in general, it is, that architect is going to present you with a floor plan. Usually that floor plan would go to a general contractor or a framer. When you work with us, it comes to us. And so we have a chunk of software that takes that floor plan, ingests it, make sure that it actually builds a closed polygon, because not all architects have that quite level of attention to detail there, and then figures out what the framing plan is, right? So, and that's really useful and important for figuring out what material to use, because right now most framers will go to a lumber yard and say, "Hey, here's the floor plan. Give me the supplies for it." And you can see there's kind of an odd incentivization structure there. And so we actually, because we're going to go and build this thing, we need to know where every nail is and where every piece of lumber is. And just kind of by accident, we end up with this very detailed accounting of all of the lumber and all of the nails that need to go into a house. So we can use that to go buy the materials. Then it gets shipped to our warehouse. The robots themselves are basically two big industrial arms, just like you'd see in an automotive factory. And we do that for a couple of reasons. One, it's off the shelf. I've seen enough robot companies try and go build their own arms and then die because it's way more expensive and time consuming than they expect. And I would love to build an arm, but not right now. And so we just have these big industrial arms. We've added our unique end effectors to the end. We've added our custom software. They pick up lumber out of a pile. They put it on our saw table. So we have a 16-inch saw blade that goes on the end of our robots and cuts the pieces of lumber down, which is pretty cool. Maybe a little intimidating. And then picks up all the cut lumber, puts it together on a table, and then they're roughly like 4 to 8 foot chunks, right? So when it's leaving here, we've built a lot of the house into kind of these more Lego brick styled chunks of a house. And what that lets a framer do on site is they take all of these chunks, put them together, and they can finish out a house in somewhere between 2 and 4 hours instead of 7 to 10 days of on-site labor. And that's really important because on-site labor is very constrained, and it's also very weather dependent, right? So if you can get all the framing up and sealed in, then everybody else can start working, and you're not so weather dependent.
That's fascinating. To me, it seems like a solution that should have been built a long time ago, but maybe the technology wasn't available, or maybe the right strategy wasn't put in place. How many homes have you actually built so far?
Yeah, so we've built 9 homes so far. Every home was different. And to your point of why hasn't this happened before, there are panel builders that exist that do it manually. They predominantly exist kind of in that northern section of the U.S. and Canada, where your build window during the summer is very short, right before it gets super cold. And so by bringing automation to it, we're decreasing the costs and allowing it to expand. And as labor gets smaller and smaller in construction, it helps offset that loss of labor force in construction.
That's great. You maybe have kind of answered this already, but I'll ask it anyway. The construction industry has been burned in the past by technology companies and having big promises and not being able to deliver. How is Bot built any different?
Yeah, fundamentally, we're interested in solving the problem, and the technology is a tool to solve that problem. And so, Brent, our CEO, spends 50-60% of his time just talking to builders, right? When we put up a house, we've got a drone out there, we've got guys out there. We're annoyingly thorough in asking questions to the framers about what does that process feel like to them, right? And so it's really us just trying to understand the problem as deeply and as humbly as we can, right? There's been we just want to be the best assistance we can to the on-site labor force, and I think in the past, a lot of companies have kind of come in and said, no, this is how you should do it, without really understanding the customer. So I think that's part of it, and then the other part of it is that we're just working, because we're talking to these customers, we're working with the same materials that they're using, right? We're trying to be just kind of a slide in replacement, as opposed to somebody that's going to re-architect the whole process. And that's allowed people to test us very early and give us very early feedback. And that just lets us keep getting better and better and better.
That's great. What's the hardest part for you about construction, given that you come from a robotics background?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I had done a little bit of woodworking and had kind of like a slight appreciation for how bad wood can be, but it can just be utterly terrible, right? And then that's very specific to the framing that we do. But at a bigger level, like it's this massive operation, right? And it takes hundreds of people to build a building, and so just kind of wrapping my brain around that whole process, and then thinking about how our one tiny little piece goes in, intersects with that big process, without disrupting all of those other players, right?
Right.
Because if we go in and accidentally poke an electrician in the eye, like they're going to be grumpy with us, right? And so it's uh, it's kind of carefully figuring out how to get yourself right into that massive system that builds everything right now.
Yeah. Well, you talked about the mission of solving the problem of homelessness. What's how big of an opportunity in the industry is this as you've done your research and put your thesis together?
Yeah. The construction industry as a whole in the U.S. is about $1.6 trillion. Framing is a smaller portion of that. Um, but basically, like, the demand is there, right? Like, we have a couple thousand uh, homes back ordered, right? The the future is really just figuring out how exactly this is done, right? Somebody is going to do this. I want it to be bot built, and I think we're the best suited to it because of our very, like, we just want to understand construction and help them, right? Like, you could say we're customer oriented, and that feels kind of cliche and like not quite the right thing for construction, but essentially we just want to be in and amongst them and understand how we can help best. And robotics, people with a robotics background, we're kind of this interdisciplinary group of people. We understand electrical, mechanical, software, uh, and that's very similar to how a home's built. And that it's another very interdisciplinary group of people all coming together to build this rather complex system, right? And so I think there's this kind of natural marriage between robotics and construction, particularly as we get better and better together.
That's great. They say that it's not the leader of the company always that makes the company successful. It's the people that they hire or the team that they bring together to found the company. Tell us a little bit about the team that you have. How big are you, and what's kind of the core skill sets that you have brought together that's really helping drive this innovation?
The team is still very small. We're growing it right now, but it's 11 engineers and 2 business people. So there's 3 of us co-founders. Uh, Myself on the technology side, Brent is our CEO, and actually my cousin. And he spent 7 years in special forces, and before
Wow.
that, sold off a couple of businesses. So he really gets the understanding people side of thing, and getting in there, understanding how this massive system of people gets the job done. And then Colin is our third co-founder. He was at Duke doing his PhD in housing policy, and this BotBuilt excited him as an avenue by which he could actually go and do something about housing policy, as opposed to just writing more papers on it. And the engineering team as a whole here, we've got electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, computer scientists. We have PhDs in civil engineering. We have PhDs in robotics. We have PhDs in artificial intelligence. Um, and it's also a very young team, right? Like, I think our median age right now is 23. I've got right, so it's a very young team, but they push hard.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that has brought us success so far is these guys have an amazing sense of humility, right? Like, they're all wicked smart, but they all work very well together, right? And it's kind of an interesting realization as you build this team, right? And you kind of look around and you go, okay, that guy's good at that, and also thinking about like social dynamics and whatnot, and you eventually ask yourself like who's the real asshole in this room, right? And it's like, oh, it's me, right? I hired a bunch of really nice people who are really smart and work well together, right? Such that, like, I'm the meanest person, and that's a great place to be, I think.
Yeah.
And so there's everybody's got kind of their niche, and works well together. I think that's the quality that really has allowed us to keep driving forward.
Yeah, that's great. I love the special forces as one of the leaders of the company, because kind of what you just shared sounds like, you work well together, you're humble, you get things done, you're innovative, can solve problems, you have the right team, the right blend of background. So to me, it sounds like a really great foundation. If you look at the market when it comes to VCs and fundraising, software is pretty well known for VCs. When you get into hardware and software, there's different groups that probably specialize in that. What's your experience been so far when it comes to raising capital and kind of just overall thoughts about that market?
Yeah, I've actually stopped referring to them as venture capitalists because that whole group seems to be, like you said, very very secure in their understanding of software. So I've actually just started referring to them as software strategics, right? Like they're people who understand software very well, and they're happy to deploy capital there. There are relatively few people who understand hardware. And then bringing those two together, which is robotics, there's an exceedingly small group of people there. And so, really, the best investors that we've found are people who understand the problem, right? And if they understand the problem, then they understand, oh, okay, it's worth putting the money into solving this problem. Um, and so that's how I think about investors. I'm by far the least sophisticated when it comes to thinking about investors. Brent and Colin spend a lot more time thinking and about that than I do.
Yeah, got it. Well, the space you're in, I think, is incredible. And if you go to your website, it says changing the way the world builds, specifically in construction and using robotics to do the framing of houses. I think that to me, it's a no-brainer. I grew up. My dad was a carpenter. I saw him coming in every morning, every night, banged up, knees hurting, hands crushed, whatever. And it's not just helping save homelessness or creating a better option for the homeless. It's also saving the construction workers. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah,
wear and tear that
100%.
robotics they can help with.
There,
So yeah,
there's definitely like I think an underappreciation of how dangerous construction is. Right. One of the crazy data points that we have is that 10 times as many people died in construction as the worst year in Afghanistan for U.S. service people. Right. So you look
wow,
at that, and it's just like this is. I mean, the old robotics cliche of dirty, dull, and dangerous. Like that's construction. We've got it's almost defined by its dirtiness. It's very repetitive, and there's always the chance that somebody's going to drop a nail gun on you.
yeah, I've seen the war wounds of those experiences. So I hear you there. Um, as a company, what keeps you up at night in your current stage of where the company's at today?
Yeah, I think I was really lucky early on to find the best thing that I can to an oracle about what kills BotBuilt. So I found this guy who had done 20 years as a CB in the Navy, and then the last 20 years of his career was just robotics, just deploying robots into factories, doing DARPA robotics challenges and whatnot. And I was, he was kind enough to sit down with me and just talk about like how does this fail, right? Because this guy has just amazing experience. And his point was that there's not one thing that kills you; it's 1,000 little things not done properly. And so the things that keep me up are kind of a whole bunch of little details that I'm constantly sweating, right? Like, how's our tolerance here? How are our nails doing going into the wood? Uh, but then also, how's the team dynamics? How are our customers, right? And just thinking about every last little piece of those. Um, that's what keeps me up at night. So there's a lot, I guess.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It sounds like a typical startup founder. Um, for those that are listening that might be, PhDs or engineers that might want to, connect with you or join the company. So what type of roles are you looking at, in 2024 of kind of filling in the gaps at the company as you scale?
Yeah, I think we need, I guess the the best way that I can conceive of what we need is really uh, somebody with a good interdisciplinary uh, background, and then one or two areas that they're really deep in. So it's very useful for people here to be able to pick up a soldering iron or use a saw while they're testing their algorithm. Right? Maybe somebody wrote a new computer vision algorithm. They're going and testing it, and like, oops, a wire popped out. Like that's happened more than once, and it's very useful to be able to just like walk up there, fix the wire, let the electrical engineering team know like, hey, this came out, here you go, this is why, but then just go and keep doing your testing, right? And so it's this kind of willingness to get into it, but also have your deep focused area. And I think computer vision is a great place where we're always hiring. We're always looking for motion planning people, embedded software. um, those are kind of the big areas that we're focusing on over the next year. And I'm sure like that's my like very cloudy startup crystal ball. So just go check out the website and see what jobs we have posted. I always have an open position because there are a lot of smart people out there that know something that I don't. So come tell me where I'm dumb because I'm
Yeah,
sure I'm doing something wrong.
that's great. All right. Well, I'm going to ask a couple questions here. We're going to switch gears. Three questions. We call it three questions with three simple answers.
Yep.
Where do you go to think big or to brainstorm?
That's a good question. Where do I think to go to brainstorm? I would say most of my ideas come to me while I'm driving. So uh, I, I don't know if it's the motion or what, but there's something calming about a long drive. So I've driven back and forth across the U.S. I think 14 times now, and
Wow.
so when I need to think about something, I'll just hop in my truck and drive around.
Go to California and come back with your solution.
Yeah, right.
I love it. That's great. What advice have you gotten from another founder that's been priceless to you as a founder?
I think probably the best advice I've gotten from another founder is to never give up. Right, just keep at it. There's so much that can go wrong and that will go wrong, but that doesn't mean it's the end. Right, it just means another thing that you have to jump over.
Yeah, that's great. We hear it all the time. You start with an idea, a dream, and you start to develop it, and then you hit a delay, and then discouraged, and then you break through and you solve the problem. So, never look at things, and think of them as bad as you think they are, and they're never as good as you think they are. It's just that perspective,
Yep.
I think, is what we hear a lot consistently. So that's great. Um, what works for you in staying positive during the ups and downs of your startup journey?
Mm, that is a great question. We do a very good job of logging all of our failures. So if I'm ever feeling discouraged, I'll just go look at what we were working on 3 months ago. And usually I've completely forgotten whatever it was because we've fixed it and it hasn't popped back up. And I go, oh, okay, yeah, it did used to be a lot worse than this. And then also music, right? Like music is massive for me. Just at any time, I'm grumpy or feeling down about stuff. I'll just I love listening to Avenged Sevenfold or Five Finger Death Punch or something just to get me all psyched up and ready to go again.
I
So,
love that. Yeah, change your state of mind. Very cool.
yep.
Well, as we wrap up here, Barrett, I want to give you a huge thanks for joining and for coming on the show here today. If someone wants to find BotBuilt or find you, where do they go?
Our website's the best place, www www.botbuilt.com. I've never tried to say that before. That's harder than it sounds.
That's great. Okay, cool. Well, we'll make sure that we'll put your website in the listing when we post this podcast. I want to thank all our listeners for joining us today. It means the world to us that you spent your time hearing this story. I can't wait to do an update with you, Barrett, down the road, see how things are progressing. My name is
That'd be
Jake
great.
Aaron Villarreal, the host of the podcast, and look forward to catching up with everyone on the next episode. Until then, take care. Before we wrap up, I want to give a big shout out to all the entrepreneurs that have joined to make this podcast possible. And for all the listeners for listening. It means the world to me that you chose to spend your time with us today. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, signing off for now. We can't wait to connect with you all soon on the next episode. Take care. This show is sponsored by Match Relevant, a company that helps venture-backed startups find the best people in the market, and they do it in 3 simple steps. First, they sit down with founders to understand their story. Second, they tell their story into multiple candidate channels. And third, they schedule interviews within 48 hours. Find us at matchrelevant.com to learn more about how we do it.